Hi, my name is Ron Meyer. I'm Professor of Strategic Leadership at TS School for Business and Society. And welcome to Meyer's Management Models, insightful tools to kickstart your thinking. This first installment is around the Mind the Gap model. And this model gives an answer to the question, what are the challenges that I'm likely to face if I try to implement big changes in my organization? Do I really know what I'm up against? This model gives you a checklist to think about those challenges. So when you're going from A to B, from the current state to the future state, that's a gap that I need to overcome. What are the challenges that I can expect? Well, our checklist actually has three separate categories. First of all, there's going to be challenges around clarity. There's very often quite a bit of ambiguity around the change that needs to be undertaken. So we'll get into that in a moment, a little bit more in depth. The second category is around ability. What are the barriers to change in terms of my capability to actually make the change happen? And the third category of challenges is around the willingness. Am I going to encounter resistance to the type of change that I want to achieve, and what should I do about it? So we go a little bit more deeply into these three categories. We'll see that there's actually three buckets in all three of these categories. So when it comes to clarity, obviously it starts with the question, have I been specific enough about what needs to be done? Is it clear who, when, how, and why, so we're actually doing what we want to do? Now, if I've made things specific enough, there's a question around credibility. People hear what I'm saying, but do they actually believe it? Am I being clear also in my intentions? So do they really believe that I'm going to drive this change and that we're committed to the change? And then thirdly, there's a question around consistency. I've given some other messages of things that need to be done, and now I'm also saying that we want to change. And people are going to say, hey, wait a second, I have this priority and that priority, and I need to change. Is it actually consistent enough, and have I clarified the priority of the change that I want to achieve? Now, if I've taken care of all of these challenges, then I need to look at my ability. Is it that I'm stuck in certain types of lock-in effects? We call this switching barriers. So I might be stuck in legacy systems. Can I actually free myself to move forward? If I want to move forward, I also need to have the required resources. So think of knowledge, skills, money, time. Do I have enough quantity and quality of resources? And then thirdly, do I actually have the ability to learn? Because I'm going to have to absorb new knowledge and I'm going to have to adapt along the way. Now, if things are clear and I'm able, then of course it comes to the question of willingness. And there's three types of resistance that we need to keep in the back of our mind. Firstly, political resistance. Are people really willing to come on board if something is against their interest? So I have to realize politically whether everyone sees that their interests are being challenged or whether they actually have a positive stake in the change. Secondly, there might be cognitive resistance. So it doesn't compute. People don't understand why this change needs to take place. And then thirdly, there might be emotional resistance. It actually might be contrary to people's sense of safety. The change is very challenging and they might react emotionally. So here you have it, 9 challenges to think about, and you could use this more or less as a checklist before you actually start on the change challenge. So if we wrap this up, what are the key insights of this model? Well, firstly, implementing change is not merely a matter of making a specific plan. You start with a specific plan, but after that there's a lot more that needs to be dealt with in terms of challenges. Secondly, these 3 broad categories are really around the topics I don't get it, I can't do it, and I don't want it. And you'll probably recognize these terms being used if you start talking about the change. Thirdly, this whole model indicates that challenges are situation specific. So you need to really look at what are the barriers, what is the type of resistance. There's no standard type of situation that you need to deal with. And fourthly, the challenges that we've mentioned, these 9 challenges, these are difficult to observe. That means you really need to think about these ahead of time, really dive into the situation to understand what you're up against. And finally, the fifth thing we can take away is that once you've looked at these 9 categories, these are the things that you need to manage. And if you feel that they're too difficult to manage, you might need to downsize the size of the change that you're undertaking. Well, hopefully a useful model for you to use in practice. I hope you find it beneficial, and I hope you'll join me next month.